Okay, my name is Tonya Thompson, and let's see, I've been a reporter since 1994. Um, it's kind of interesting to see how everybody's journey is very, very different. As I was listening to Tori talking about how long ago she had the fun experience of chemo and radiation, I'm kind of the opposite, where this just happened in 2019. Once again, court reporting plays in. Um, I never miss an annual exam. From the time I was very, very young, I always went and, got everything looked at, and it was never a problem. But I wasn't actually with the gynecologist. I actually prefer male gynecologists, which is kind of a little different. There's always a female person there. Um, they just seem a little more mellow. I would rather go to the gynecologist than have somebody looking in my eyes. I know that's kind of weird, but when people are looking in your eyes and they're going to dilate you, that's just freaks me out. Anyway, so I'm with the physician's assistant, and he is doing the exam, and we get to talking about court reporting. And my daughter wants to do that. Oh wow, that sounds so cool and great. So the breast exam palpation does not happen that day. Um, and of course, I would have scheduled a mammogram, but normally they go ahead and do a breast exam. And it just happened to be that night. And I was laying on the couch. Guys, sorry, you're just going to get TMI on this one. Women and men, I guess, breast tissue sometimes is the lymph nodes are very big and lumpy, or they're smooth. I don't trust myself to do my own exam, and I promised myself I would always get an annual breast exam for that reason, because I feel stuff and then I scare myself, and they're like, no, that's just an enlarged lymph node, go back home. So I get home, I'm just laying on the couch, and I'm like, whoa, 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 there's a big, huge knot in there. I'm like, hey, babe, come here. He's like, didn't you just go get your female exam? I said, I did. He said, didn't they do, the palpation? I said, we might have gotten distracted. He said, oh my God. He said, tomorrow morning, you're going straight to the doctor's office and they're going to do it. They're going to call the mammography place, and they will get you in. This is not funny. This is big and bad. So kind of scared me a little bit, but he is always there for me. So I did go back. Yes, 20 minutes later, go to the mammogram place, you're front and center, your first priority. And when you go to the mammography place and they say, come in this office and sit down, the doctor will be right in, you're in trouble. So, yes, it was a lump that was about 3.5 centimeters, which is too big to just be directly extracted. That's bigger than an inch. It really did. It felt like a rock. It was very, very hard. It didn't feel just like a lymph node. And I don't know, because I had never missed an exam, I wasn't really worried. I thought, well, gosh, is this a big C or is this a little C? Because it's only been 11 months since my last mammogram. So this has developed in the course of 11 months. So, how bad could it be? Luckily, I was right. It actually was very, very aggressive. But as it turns out, an attorney's son was my surgeon. And he is very well known for being the top robotics surgeon in the nation. And it looks like I've got a little razor cut here. We had to do chemo and radiation to reduce it. I found out on June 25th of 2019, and I had surgery on July 29th. No, I'm sorry, on November 7th. November 7th, I had surgery. of 2019. So it didn't take very long before we went ahead and reduced that lump enough to where they could extract it. Then, of course, you're going to have to still do more chemo and radiation, for about a year. And of course, when you do that, I've got really thick hair, but I filled up a trash can full of hair, trash can like this, full of hair. And there was just a little bit left. So that's what I was looking at. July 29th, I went to visible changes. Make a note. If you start losing hair and you need to get it shaved off, but you're too cheap to buy a wig, visible changes, if you let them shave your head, they will match your hair color and give you a wig. That's part of one of their programs that they do to support cancer treatment. So poor little girl shaved my hair and she was crying like crazy. And I was like, my mom was a hairdresser. It will grow back. Don't worry, it will grow back. And yeah, I've got a couple of scars on my head. So I was more worried about, looking like a very scarred, bald person. But it was really interesting because my hair color's kind of unique, I guess. They matched it so well that when I was going to court and, I had my wig on and everything, the judges would say, Tonya, wow, you got your hair cut. That's a really cute cut. And then I would kind of give them a peek and they're like, oh, they had no idea. They had no idea that it wasn't my hair. Now, as it grows out, then it's harder to keep the wig on. So maybe you have a beret or a hat. You get permission to wear a hat in court. And I had a great judge that when I was getting the phone call I just said, if I get a phone call, I'm going to need to take a break. I know we're getting ready to start a trial and some hearings and things, but this phone call is kind of important. And he said, no, I want to cancel everything. His court reporter that he had before he was a visiting judge had breast cancer and just recently passed away from cancer that came back about 10 years later. But he understood what the process was and he just didn't want me to worry about it. I said, Judge, I swear I will keep my act together. If they say I've got cancer, so what? I can handle it. I can do this. I'm not a crybaby. I've got this. And so I did have to take the phone call. It happened during lunch. And he looked at me and I said, yeah, I guess I'm going to have to do some chemo and stuff. And he was so, so great. And I worked with him quite a bit. But so far as the treatment, my cancer oncologist is very well known in the cancer field, in breast cancer in particular. Her name's Amy Lang. Ironically, she ended up with leukemia. But she was asking me when they got my first blood work, what do you do? I mean, what's going on with you? This is very unusual. And I've never been sick in my life. I've never given birth to a child. I was freaking out. I'm like, you're looking at my blood work. What's wrong? She said, okay, when we give you chemo and radiation, your immune system is supposed to be compromised and, everything is supposed to get lower and you'll be more susceptible to infection and things like that. She said, yours is actually getting stronger. And I don't know, why is that happening? I said, well, nutrition and exercise like everybody, right? Don't eat nitrates and nitrites and, all the process. She said, no, people don't do that. I said, well, I've done that since I was young. We butchered our own meat and we didn't go to the store all the time and we grew our own vegetables. And she said, yeah, that makes a really big difference. That makes a really big difference. I never, ever got sick. I didn't want children because you get morning sickness and I don't like being sick. I never, ever, my stomach never even got upset. The hair was the most dramatic thing that happened. And that just was no big deal at all. As a matter of fact, I don't know if y'all can see it. I'll try to get it. That was the first time I actually took the wig off in public. We were in Maui that year in February. And after that, I didn't even put my wig back on because it just wouldn't stay on. It was too much of a hassle. But that guy right there, he's 72 right now, and I'm 50. I'll be 58. Our entire marriage, the entire time I've known him, which is 34 years, he has been saying, when I die, you'll be set. When I die, you'll be taken care of. When I die. And so I've always asked him, are you going to die already? I mean, the life insurance is paid up, or are you going to get busy living? Are you dying or are you living? And this was a reality check that just because you're older, it doesn't mean you're going to go first. So it's really interesting. He's probably Sheldon from the Big Bang Theory, you know, things that normal people wouldn't actually say, like, hey, are you going to the gym? Because you're starting to look a little heavy in the, you know, waist area. Little things like that. I can't believe I still have this ring on, but I've never seen a bill for any of my treatments. There are spreadsheets where he just took care of everything. He made sure that everything was taken care of, that the insurance was covering things, that if it's diagnostic as opposed to, you know, where we would have to pay for it, he would make sure that all of that stuff was managed properly. So I never had to worry about that. But that also takes your stress level down. If I'm not worrying about that. But Tori was right. I can see now, looking back, how stressed he was about that. And I know my turn is coming up to have to take care of him. And I hope I'm up to it. But so far as cancer, it can be really a frightening thought. But if you manage your care and you're very proactive and get your annual exams and all of that, it really takes the stress level down. So it can still happen, but if you catch it early, these are mine. They have gotten a little bit bigger as I've gained a little bit more weight, and I'm going to blame that on chemo. I had to get the rings and everything made bigger because you have swelling and things like that. But, you know, I'll take a little bit more weight as opposed to just not being here at all. Breast cancer, of all cancers, is one that if it's caught early enough, you probably will not have to worry about it. And they have drugs that mitigate the chance of it coming back also. So guys, you know, we know that it can happen to you guys too. We actually lost a Judge Barlow, to breast cancer. As it turns out, 2 of his 3 daughters also ended up having breast cancer. They're still with us, but we did lose Judge Barlow. So it can happen. One of the things that they've noticed, young kids, they're at the gym and they're sticking it right here. This can be a problem. Having the phone that close to your chest is not a really good idea. I don't know what it does if we're sticking it in our pocket down here, if that's going to create the same issues. But another thing that is a possibility for why this happens, I'm still kind of curious as to why this happens. Is it environmental, or is it the things that we are ingesting or wearing? I'm not sure. This is called Native. This is a deodorant. They sell it at Target. It's a little more expensive, but it's really good. It's not going to keep the sweat from happening. It'll be a little adjustment, but antiperspirant, if you look at the back of, I use Secret forever. If you look at the back of the Secret, it says aluminum. Aluminum is carcinogenic. So look at that first. Birth control pills, yeah, that's one of the warnings that they tell you about. And I will admit that I was so determined not to be a parent that I actually took birth control pills 30 days of every month for 30 years. So that was not the only method of birth control. We got the wagon fixed, but I still always took those pills just to be sure. That could have caused it. I will say that I had a friend of my mom's. She was like my grandmother, but she's from a family of 16 kids. Every child ended up with some kind of cancer, breast cancer, kidney cancer, liver cancer. Now, that still doesn't answer the question why. It could be environmental, or it could be something they were eating. I want the answer to that. That's what really bothers me, is why. But what I want to let you know is that the nutrition and exercise, I think, are really, really important. Yes, it can happen. This guy right here, I think, saved my life. And Chris knows who it is. He was my dance instructor. I just like to go to the gym and just dance and get rid of stress. And, you start, kind of talking and everything, and you create a family of, positivity. And so I really do believe that staying active is very, very important for mental health and for physical health. And so that is something, if you can kind of start thinking about these things, how can I maybe be healthier and stronger? And then also, of course, getting your exams. That's super, super important. Tori hit, gosh, so many things, but the fact that we keep bringing awareness to the breast cancer, I think, is why we have had so much success. And people are not, finding it stage 4 and stage 5 for the most part. We usually catch it a little earlier. Pancreatic, usually that's still stage 4. Ovarian is usually still stage 4. And, hopefully we can figure out a way to where there's some kind of scan, just like our mammograms, where that stuff can be caught early. Because, I'm sorry, it comes down to money. We've thrown a lot of money at breast cancer. And so that's why, we're still here. We're still fighting. But that's pretty much it, guys. It is not a death sentence. There are so many people now that have experienced this and gone through this and survived and thrived, and fought like a warrior. That just because you hear the word cancer doesn't mean that it has to be the big C. So, anywho, I'll turn it over to you, Josh.